5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
It's how I roll, a shooting star in a film noir. I'm floating around 10 feet on the ground. I'm floating around 10 feet on the ground.
Hey there, it's Dr. John Baranchuk, aka Techno Idiot. Still waiting for that first show to go through without any technical errors. For some reason, when I stepped into my studio, it said I was scheduled to go on at 8, so I was in the midst of a reconfiguration. But I thought I'd just go with what we got. We got the two most important people here, Jessica Nicely and Craig Roach. Hello, hello, hello. If I was scheduled for 8, it'll be a small audience today. If I was scheduled at 6, it still may be a small audience today, considering the topic at hand, which is pareidolia. I hope I can leave here tonight with some ongoing viewers after this presentation, because photography is both a very large source of pareidolia and a very large source of Bigfoot evidence. Same with audio taping, and we'll talk a little bit about that tonight. As far as auditory pareidolia goes, we'll be covering auditory pareidolia and visual pareidolia tonight. As always, welcome to everybody. Thank you very much for attending. Hope you are having a great beginning to your week. Interesting topic today for sure. Start. Jessica says she's going to give me a run for the night. No doubt she'll come up with a question that I can't ask. But superstitious behavior. That's more along the lines, Jessica, of coincidence rather than pareidolia. I'm not going to go much into the physiology, but pareidolia is actually a central nervous system. It's a brain process that goes on in everybody, not just Bigfooters and dog trainers or dog owners maybe, but it's a process that goes on in our brain in everybody's head. It's not just superstitious behavior, but certainly can evolve into superstitious behavior, misidentification of Bigfoot, and so on and so forth. So, as always, please keep your conversations between yourselves in lower font. In larger font, type any questions in all large font, and I will try to answer those. The subtitle of this show, Grasping Sasquatch, is Stories and Science, and so I try and include a Sasquatch story that's specific to the topic. It's kind of hard to find Sasquatch stories about pareidolia. Even if people have them, most people are wanting to say it's Bigfoot. So I'm going to go back to The Locals by Tom Powell again today, written by Hancock House. Good read, good book, good guy. Hey, Eric, how are you, buddy? Nice to see you. Hope everybody's feeling well today. And this is on page 156 of Tom Powell's book called The Locals, and it's called The Harry Oakes Story, and it's written by Henry Franzioni. This was kind of the idea for my book, which I haven't gotten much response from people sending in their stories and then compiling their stories into a book, but that's all right. We've got other things that we can pursue on the burner. So Henry Franzioni wrote the Harry Oakes story. Here's a story that's particularly or partially documented in the Portland Oregonian, partially documented on Channel 2 News, KATU, videotaped, partially documented in Track Record issue number 18, and partially from Harry Oakes' personal recollections. It's dated June 8th through 12th, 1989. On Friday, 3-year-old Joseph Edwin Leffler disappeared from his mobile home on Squaw Creek Road, southeast of Escadeta. He told his mother he was going fishing, play fishing, on a shallow fall creek, only 200 feet from the house. The boy was lightly dressed, wore sneakers, and had with him 2 adult male, part dingo, part Australian Shepherd dogs. Dan and Jack, a small white puppy, was there as well. The dogs were 2.5 years old and 9 3/4 months old. Harry Oakes, a tracking dog handler who represents the Mountain Wilderness Search Dogs, a volunteer nonprofit in Gresham, Oregon, based search and rescue unit, and his search group were called into the hunt for the lost boy. This happened at about 6 p.m. Harry's dog Ranger and Harry and his partner found tracks of the boy and his dogs a mile west of the boy's home, headed downstream through marshy ground on nearby Delph Creek. Harry and his partner thought somebody could be playing a joke. There was a series of barefoot 4-toed prints, and the boy's tracks disappeared. They could see where something described as huge had been walking through the brush. Harry measured one track where there was a good imprint, not sliding, at 27 by 10 with a 5-foot stride. The track was a 1/2 inch deep in very hard ground. Weighing 125 pounds, Harry said he stomped on the ground with his boots and couldn't make a dent. Ranger sniffed and ignored the Bigfoot tracks, hunting for the boy's tracks, which had mysteriously disappeared near a road. The 939th Air Force Reserve Aerospace Rescue and Recovery Group had 2 helicopters with infrared video cameras in the area to search a grid. Harry said a report came in from somebody flying above. I won't say who, it gets too embarrassing. If you question the sheriff's office, they'll deny every bit of it, that their flare system, parentheses, forward-looking infrared, end parentheses, was being used, and about that time they noticed a huge object on the flare system, something they've never seen before. They wanted Harry to go check it out. Looking around the area, they did find the tracks again, the same huge size that they had seen near the creek earlier. Questioning the FLIR operator later, Harry said the operator told him, "I don't know, the thing was huge. Walking, no, maybe that's physically impossible to be that huge on the system. What do you think?" At about that time, little Joey walked up to Judy McGill, one of the Mountain Wilderness Search Team members, just before noon on Sunday in the wooded area near the base camp. He stretched out his arms and I picked him up, and she said. Harry said his first comment, besides that he was hungry, was to KATU Channel News on tape before anyone could talk with him, was a big hairy monster came and got him and the 3 dogs and kept him safe. Fed him berries, salmon berries. Harry later said you could see the place where the boy sat down before his prints disappeared, and showed me where the creek was. They slept in a mining cave, and when the helicopter came up, he said the monster got scared and left, and he, Joey, took off too. Beyond that, Harry was not able to question the boy, as he was immediately helicoptered off to the University Hospital in Portland, where he was checked and released at about 7:30 p.m. that night. There was no sign of hypothermia, and Harry said the dogs were credited with saving Joey's life by sleeping at night with the boy and keeping him warm. In fact, Channel 2 KATU News reported the boy's story and showed the video of his arrival in camp, but prefaced this tape segment with, "The boy told the story with the only way he could, with eyes rolling, implying an unbelievable tall tale." The rest of our local media, both television and newspapers, talked about the boy being saved by his dogs for the following week. Big local story. Everyone was happy about Joey being found alive and being saved by the dogs. And that's the way it's remembered in these parts by most people. No one else believed the 3-year-old little Joey story about the monster, except Harry and his partner. One must admit it is quite a kind and thoughtful gesture to offer usher a child out of the woods, particularly for a creature that is variously portrayed in the Bible and mythology as a monster or the devil. It's a pity there aren't more of these creatures around to assist the dozens of hikers that lose themselves annually in the forests in the Pacific Northwest. One wonders just how desperate the situation has to become before the locals will step from the shadows and render assistance to the human in distress. The sighting reported by Terry Miller of Sweet Home, Oregon, sheds some light on this question. Terry is a very experienced hunter and former outfitter who was deer hunting on the west side of Mount Jefferson Wilderness on October 12, 2002, when he seriously injured his shoulder. In his disabled condition, he was forced to spend an unplanned night in the woods, and for most of the night he could make out the outline of a large creature that was keeping careful eye on his situation. Terry writes, "I was on Maxwell View out of Mount Jefferson. I had shot my deer and I lost my balance and fell about 30 feet down, dislocating my right shoulder. I was alone. This was around 10 a.m. I managed to gut out my deer and try to pull it down to the Maxwell Trail. After passing out several times because of the pain, I decided to spend the night out there. I located a spot where I could burn a big snag to keep me warm through the night. By the time the snag was on fire, it was dark. I could see a dark figure watching me the whole night. I tried several times to relocate my arm, but with no luck. The next morning at dawn, I started to mark my trail back out with sticks. After making a sling for my arm, I managed to walk to the Seven Lakes Trail. I did not have the strength to continue up the hill, but it was the only way out. I finally hit Duffy Trail, which was the trail out of the wilderness. When I was resting, I could see a dark blondish color female Bigfoot approaching me. I could tell the gender because of her breasts, and she was not as hairy as the male. She had feminine features in her face, and her face was more slender looking than the male, and she looked very, very human. I did nothing but sit and let her come near. She got within 15 feet of me. I could see her face, her eyes, and her body. In her eyes, I could tell that she had no intentions of harm. She wanted to help me. After a few minutes of contact with the female, I heard two backpackers approaching the trail. When I turned to look at her, she gently turned and walked back into the trees. When the backpackers were helping me, there was a male Bigfoot watching from the trees. He was approximately 8 feet tall, stocky build, and darker colored hair. He was almost black, but he could blend with the tree bark really well. As the backpackers were helping me out, the male Bigfoot was keeping an eye on me. I can tell this because I could hear him walking ahead of us by 100 yards or so. I could tell where he was all the time. I asked the backpackers if they believed in Bigfoot. They said they thought it was a hoax, so I kept my sighting to myself. The Bigfoot followed us all the way to the trailhead. From there, I went to the hospital. Wow. That last story. Awesome, awesome sighting from that close. Jessica says, strange that there's no interaction with the dog. You said that they could easily kill dogs. Yeah, and as I read that story, frankly, one of the things that I'm not really clear on is what dogs. Because the tracker, it sounds like to me as I read that the tracker brought his dogs into the hunt. So it's not clear to me whether the dogs were in fact the tracking dogs that slept with them all night, or whether it was some other dog creatures somehow associated with Bigfoot that was with the dog. Bigfoots are known to follow coyotes and other packs. It's a great story. I don't understand why it's not a sufficient encounter and observation. Eric, you didn't put it in caps, bud, but I'm gonna put it up there because it warrants a comment. Yes, it's a great story, and I don't understand why that's not a sufficient encounter or an observation. Eric, there's unfortunately or fortunately, I guess, there's hundreds, if not thousands, of sightings where people have seen Bigfoot up close. And while if you're a zoologist, if you're a naturalist, the typical path is to build a hide or a shelter or a blind and go into the field where you believe that rare creature is and try and see that creature if you can, get photographs, if not a species. And so Bigfoot researchers have been following this model, I think, since the beginning of Bigfoot research, formal Bigfoot research. And keep in mind that when the Patterson-Gimlin film was filmed, not only did you have the film of Patty walking away, you had the footprints that were in the stream bed, which were also filmed. Those prints were also cast and later analyzed by Dr. Meldrum and found to be Bigfoot prints. It's one of the few Bigfoot prints that we have video of. And then of course, we've got the Patterson-Gimlin video. Now, we could ask your question of the Patterson-Gimlin film. It's a good question. What is enough? What is going to be enough? It doesn't appear to this researcher that video or photographs or reports, anecdotal reports of sightings, I just read 2 of them, that they're not sufficient clearly to prove Bigfoot. And I really do believe Bigfoot as a species, and I really do believe that if it was another creature, excuse me, that wasn't considered a cryptid, I think the level of acceptance might have happened. I think that the legend has stiffened science, and I think the bar has been set higher for Bigfoot than it is for other species. And I'm not the first to say this. People with big names have made the same observation, that we've got a higher hill to climb and we got to come out with more substantive proof. I watched a video, in fact, yesterday that kind of detailed the search for Bigfoot when the Erickson project was going on, and around the same time, I'm forgetting the British gentleman. I'm blocking on his name. It's a sin. He's a big name in the field. Sykes. Dr. Sykes was working on a DNA study. Erickson project, Melba Ketchum's DNA study. I guess I should say, I'm so culturally, ethnocultural, that we don't think much about the fact, or often about the fact, that other folks have done DNA analysis on this creature. Dr. Sykes and the Ericksonian project being 2 of them. If I'm recollecting correctly, the Erickson project, or maybe it's yet a third project, a rather wealthy gentleman mounted expeditions of a variety of experts. And all these other, besides Dr. Ketchum's study, none of these other studies were able to prove or pull out an unknown genome, an unknown species genome. So earlier, before the show started, and I misread the start time of my show, I wanted to have a little fireplace chat with us at this point. Title of the show: choose to minimize or maximize your pareidolia in your Bigfoot research. And I think the word I want to emphasize in that title is choose. We have a choice in this process about whether to take inadequate pictures, ill-formed pictures, Bigfoot or blob squatch pictures, dark, shadowy pictures that oftentimes result in taking pictures, posting, and then circling or pointing an arrow to the Bigfoot. It could be Bigfoot, some of them. I suspect more than some are pareidolia, although I imagine the takers of those photos would take great exception to that. But as I said earlier in response to Jessica's comment, pareidolia is a natural phenomena. And so I had the fireplace video that I was going to put up for our little fireside show chat. I just really want you guys to think back. Think back to why you became interested in Bigfoot. What was the attraction? For me, I was actually looking for some trout streams to fish up in northern Georgia. And that's when I came across the BFRO website and went on my first Bigfoot expedition. My goal on that first expedition was to see Bigfoot. That remains my goal on every Bigfoot expedition, because I haven't seen Bigfoot. I've seen some awesome eye shine, multiple eye shine from what was likely juveniles and infants on an expedition. And that was pretty close, and that's about as close as I've come to actually visually seeing one. But it occurred on a dark night, and all I could see were the peepers' eye shine. So, why did you get into Bigfoot? Did you want to see a Bigfoot? If you've been into Bigfoot research for a while, have you achieved that? If you haven't achieved that, why not? Are you going out and pursuing Bigfoot with video or audio equipment? And I want you to ask yourself, to what end or why am I taking Bigfoot photos? I tried to list some reasons that I could fathom why people would take Bigfoot photos. Maybe you saw one and you were keen enough to get a photo, and so you want that photo as proof for yourself, proof for others that you actually saw a Bigfoot. Nothing wrong with that. Are you doing that because you're one of those like myself who aspires to gather data that will prove the species' existence? If you're taking photos for that purpose, guys, rethink your plan. If the Freeman footage, if the Patterson Gimlin film photography hasn't done it, there's not much photography that's going to be accepted by the scientific community, which brings me full scale to me completing a point I started earlier, which was, and I just lost it. Think about, without getting into the controversy, think about the photographs that our friend, and I'm having dysnomia for his name, the gentleman up in Canada, or Todd Standing. Think about the fidelity and the clarity of those pictures, whether you believe in those pictures or not. Just think about the fidelity and the quality of those pictures. That's the fidelity and the quality that people are looking for, and no one else seems to have been able to get. And that's as far as I'm going to say. But if science is going to take it serious, it's going to have to be fidelity and quality in a picture similar to that. And we've seen the plight of Todd Standing, and whether you support him or not, honestly, photographers are damned if they do, damned if they don't. He puts out this incredibly clear picture, and people are very skeptical. Yet I go on another website and I see a blob squatch, and I see the poster being congratulated on their great capture, when I myself looking at it on my screen on my phone, or pulling it up on um, my computer for a larger picture, I can't find Bigfoot anywhere, even trying to allow for pareidolia. So photos aren't science. You aren't producing a scientific result with photos. So ask yourself, why are you taking photos? To what end? Is it a remembrance, a trophy? The bigger question then to me becomes, why do you post those photos? Well, certainly one reason, and not on my list, one reason that they could be posted is that the people taking these pictures genuinely believe they're seeing a Sasquatch or a Bigfoot in those shadows that most of us can't make out a Sasquatch or anything vaguely resembling a Sasquatch. Right? So, is that being done for trophy and bragging rights? Is that being done for proof to others? Is that being done for pride? Look at me, I've got a picture of Bigfoot. Is that being done for fame or fortune? Why, if you're one of those people that post photos where you've got to circle them or point to them, help me understand why you're posting them. I genuinely want to understand that, because they're marginal to begin with. They're nowhere close as the Patterson Gimlin film is, nowhere close to Todd's images. And you're posting them out there. What are you hoping that somebody will see the picture and that will be the proof? And I'm not trying to be a wise guy here. I fail to understand why people invest so much money. Think about the money spent every year on cameras, FLIRs, drones, temperature sensitive, night vision goggles. How often do you use those? I've got a night vision camera that I've pulled out once. I could record a picture. I just don't. I don't think a picture is going to be the proof, because pictures can be altered in addition to the pareidolia involved in the picture. So, I think taking pictures is part of the problem that creates pareidolia. And has any photograph or videotape, photography, or any audio recording evidence been found to be sufficient to prove Bigfoot as a species? And you guys know the answer to that question just as well as I do. The answer is no. So why is everybody marketing FLIR so hard, night vision so hard, trail cameras so hard? And if you've ever been successful in capturing an image, honestly, would somebody who's not into Bigfoot look at that image and say, boy, that could be a big creature, a bear, or something like that? Those photographs are out there, don't get me wrong, as are those videos. And I'm not trashing all photography and video here. But I think you need to think long and hard about what your goal for the images that you capture are about. And if the goal for the images that you capture are about proving to science you need to either consider a different medium than video or photography or digital, or you need to begin to utilize that equipment within the context of an experiment. And you're danged if you do and danged if you don't track way. But if the Freeman footage didn't prove it, again, if the Patterson-Gimlin film didn't prove it, I don't see that we're doing it. I think fishing has been a lifelong hobby for me. And one of the favorite questions on the fishing tour is, are we selling, is the bait catching the fish or is the bait catching the lure? And I really think that the video companies, the drone companies, I think they're hooking a lot of people in the hopes of getting an image of Bigfoot. People are spending thousands of dollars. And if it's captured, what are we going to do about it? What are we going to do with it? Who's the video expert that's going to confirm it? It turns out that the science, who was representing science in this video that I watched this past weekend, was a bunch of scholars. And they said they would take a look at it if they'd gotten DNA. And that's why the frantic search for DNA started. Question. What is the acceptable medium? Sounds like there is nothing that's accepted as proof. Hey, so far, you're right. There is no acceptable medium for Bigfoot. This is why I'm sitting here. Psychological science is the only science I know that can measure unseen, difficult to conceptualize and touch phenomena. So obviously, I think the answer, the medium, is psychological science. Stop trying to capture a picture of Bigfoot and start doing scientific experimentation with Bigfoot phenomena. Jennifer Arnold, let's see, I see your word question in caps. So I'm going to move on to you. Thank you. Where are you? There you are, girl. Couldn't good photographic or video evidence be an important part of proving the species? Awesome question. You must have watched the show before. And on one level, I've kind of already answered that question for you, Jennifer. Yes, good photographic and video evidence can be an important part of proving the species, but it can't be the primary medium being used to capture the species. If the video, and in my opinion, and that's my opinion, if the equipment that we're talking about, infrared, drones, heat seeking, FLIR, night vision, if these types of equipment were being used within an experimental context, not as the primary source for the data, but as converging or collateral sources, providing additional data to back up the main findings of the study. Oh, well, that number, Dr. Branchak, all I see is a number there, and it says there's a significant difference between responses that you got in a Bigfoot area to a tree knock and responses you got from an area having humans. How do you know? How can you tell that humans aren't going up to the Bigfoot area and making tree knocks? I'm sorry, I'm switching designs here on you. I'm talking about the house, the tree structures. How do you know that humans aren't going in and making those tree structures? How do you know Bigfoots aren't making the tree structures in the human area? Your number says that, but that means nothing to me. So what do? You use your cameras, you use audio as backup recording devices to not only allow the statistical and scientific analysis to prove that Bigfoots respond more to tree knocks than humans, but now you've hopefully got video evidence of that. So good photography and video could be invaluable evidence. What I'm speaking and trying to discourage people from doing, if I can figure out, is using photography as the primary medium for proof. Because I don't know how much you guys look at videos, but there are some pretty awesome looking Bigfoot videos out there. But it's not enough. And so we're continuing to spend more of our money, more of our time, more of our energy into having a photograph or a video be that ultimate proof. Guys, that just isn't going to happen. And if that's why you're taking video, if that's why you're taking audio recordings, you got to start doing experiments to give those some scientific value and validity. If that hopefully that answers your question, Jennifer. How much are you thinking about spending on a video or audio tech in the next 3 years? Why are you investing in the video and audio gear? It's got to be one of the most frequent campfire conversations. Everybody proudly breaks out their latest and greatest FLIR or heat-seeking missile or whatever the case may be. Honestly, guys, given that video and audio haven't been sufficient proof at all, I think we're being sold down the river. That's just my opinion. No scientific basis for it, but it hasn't happened so far with some outstanding images and some outstanding recordings. I saw somebody just challenging this Jesus, not Meldrum, Ron Moorhead's Sierra Sounds this the other day. Hard to believe. Video cannot produce any type of empirical statement. Yeah, you need a scientific context for this kind of evidence. It's not going to be proof in and of itself. But the other reason I'm down on photographs is they're pareidolia producers. You want to find a Bigfoot? Stand in the middle of a meadow with your camera and slowly spin in a 360-degree circle and take pictures of the tree line, and then frame the next section of the tree line and the next and spin a full 360 degrees. I can just about guarantee you that when you later look at that photograph, you're going to find something that could be a Bigfoot in there. Because our mind, returners, if you recall when we talked about cognitive dissonance, it creates a disequilibrium, an imbalance in our mind. And our brain is primed to want to resolve that disequilibrium, to restore that balance. And so our brain then makes something of that image that has meaning to us to resolve that dissonance. So we're programmed to see pareidolia, and we're putting the ink blots right in front of everybody's faces when we post these questionable photographs, and videos. Not to mention that though we're adding questionable, even we're adding vague pictures to the database. Although we're going to get to pareidolia, I think we need to consider two other things: confirmation bias, a tendency to look for information that supports rather than rejects one's perception, typically by interpreting evidence to confirm existing beliefs while rejecting or ignoring any conflicting data. That's happening when you look at a picture, folks. That's happening. It has the potential to run rampant. And Eric wins the anticipatory word of the day: anthropomorphism. He made a comment earlier about it, that he hates all this anthropomorphizing. This is the foundation for confirmation bias, in my opinion. And this is the part of the process involved in visual and audio pareidolia. Anthropomorphism is the attribution of human characteristics or behavior to a god, animal, or object. Obviously, for our purposes, we need to be concerned about this process as it applies to Bigfoot, be they objects, animals, or gods, or demons, or intradimensional or not. It is indeed rare to meet a Bigfoot researcher that does not anthropomorphize. Many of you have heard this before, but the one that I continue to hear on a weekly basis is Bigfoots are curious. Oh, they watch the kids because they're curious. We make a bunch of racket and noise, and that draws them in because they're curious about what's going on. Intelligent is another one. They hide because they're intelligent. You can be dumb and still know when to hide. It doesn't have to have anything to do with intelligence. But getting back to curiosity, guarding behavior, maternal instinct, submission behavior, aggression behavior, denial, revenge, tribal loyalty, fear, procreation. All these are instinctual, hardwired behaviors that could explain that curiosity. Why do they stay close? Why do they track us? Why do they follow us? But these are all hardwired in. That's not intellect. That's not curiosity. That's similar to fight flight. Our fight flight is hardwired into our nervous system. So we have those fight flight responses. Well, these behaviors up here are hardwired into most animals or most creatures. It's hard to choose a correct word because I don't know what Bigfoot is. But before we go assigning curiosity and attributing the human characteristics of curiosity and intelligence to these creatures, we've got to first prove that it is or isn't instinct. So let's see if I get off my high horse. So here we're going to get into, in the strictest sense, this probably isn't pareidolia, but it's illusions, after images. Light bulb flash. This flag, let's see if I can get it up there big and bold for everybody to see. The deal here is you stare at that white dot for 30 seconds. And then you stare at the blank piece of paper that I didn't tell you to get, the blank white piece of paper. You stare at the flag for 30 seconds and then look at a blank piece of white typing paper. And if you focus and stare long enough, what's going to happen is the complementary colors are going to appear on that white piece of paper. It's an after image. That works for me sometimes, sometimes it doesn't. The easier example, of course, is light bulbs. For if you're old enough to experience your photograph being taken with the big light bulbs or a big bright flash, when you had your pictures taken and it was those big light bulbs that flashed, only one use. When you looked around, you saw light bulbs flashing all over around you. That's another example of an after image. And then the third one on my list, I think, red lights and green lights, guys. The group I belong to prefer red lights, but they'll accept a green light. No white lights. Why no white lights? It takes you 30 minutes once you turn off a white light for your night vision to adjust completely and see well in the dark. How long does it take after you turn off a red light or a green light? Nothing. None. You turn it off, your eyes are already adapted. Nonetheless, you've been walking around all night with people putting red lights and green lights in your eyes. And what's one of the most common colors people report of Bigfoot eyes? Red. Every eye shine that I've seen has been red. Do I think that was because of an after image? Not with these peepers, the number of peepers we saw and the number of people who saw them. No, I don't think it was an after image. But you can have after images from red lights, green lights. Think about orbs. And could you be seeing orbs due to after images? I'm not saying orbs don't exist. I'm not saying that they're not real, that you're not seeing things out there. But there's a difference between seeing an after image and seeing eye shine. And our brain can fool us, is the point. Here's another one. Big screen. Big screen. Is line A or line B longer? The straight line itself. You guys have been on my show. I've used this before. I won't belabor it. Honestly, to me, line A looks longer. Always does. But in fact, the lines are the same length. The straight line between the arrows pointing inward, A, and the straight line between B with the arrows pointing outward. That straight line is the same in both those cases. But the context influences our perception of things and how big things are versus how small things are. Jennifer, I just caught your other question. I don't like leaving questions hang. If I ever don't answer one of your questions, scream at me. If these animals are very closely related to us, couldn't they share some of the same characteristics and behavior that we have? Absolutely, and you've got a lot of people banking on it. I assure you. But for me, Jennifer, honestly, obviously they have some human characteristics. obviously they've got digits, primates. So they've got characteristics of primates. I'm tempted to rattle off some myths. Did you know that Bigfoots don't have an opposable thumb in the same way that humans have an opposable thumb? Let me back out here. Get me back up here. The big meaty portion of my hand, of my thumb there, that big muscle. When you look at a Bigfoot handprint, it doesn't have that big muscle. Humans use that big muscle in opposition. We can touch each of our fingers to our thumb and back. Bigfoot's thumb can't do that. When you look at a Bigfoot handprint, it's flat. It doesn't have that drumstick at the bottom of the thumb. So they can use their thumb in opposition, kind of like this. But to reach and grasp using the thumb, that's not happening. And Jennifer, the reason I brought that question, or I brought that point up, is, as I said a little bit earlier, I don't know what these things are. I don't know if they're a relict hominid. I don't know if they're a primate. I don't know, I don't know if there's some government or alien creation. I really don't know. A lot of people, and no offense to the people who have done this, but a lot of people have latched on to the flesh and blood belief. And it sounds like you're of that ilk. And that's not a criticism calling it an ilk. It's an appealing prospect because they do seem so human-like. We share common DNA with the great ape, and they have so many great ape characteristics, and chimpanzee and monkey characteristics. So it's very appealing to latch on to them being a hominin of some site. So my book's out, and the main reason my book's out is we just haven't done the research. We don't know. We've been doing this naturalistic observation and zoological observation for so long. We have piled attribute after attribute after ability onto these animals or whatever. It's hard to talk about them without labeling them even. And I'm using the word animal. I don't know if they're an animal. But let me make sure I get to your question. Couldn't they share some of the, yeah, and I think they do. I think that's pretty obvious from people's reports that they do. I don't discount reports and anecdotes, and so many anecdotes describe human-like behaviors. Caring for a weak or an infant child was in the story, one of the two stories I read today. So I do believe they could share many of the human characteristics. I'm not sure that necessarily makes them human. I think we really need to do scientific research to figure this out. We accept flesh and blood reports from people. We're skeptical about spiritual. We're skeptical about interdimensional reports. Does something not seem right to anyone else about that? The skeptics out there laugh at our flesh and blood reports, and then we turn around and laugh at woo reports. That's not right. If we had a lot of scientific data, it would be a whole nother thing. And so, Jennifer, I think it could be a good thing. I think it could be a bad thing. Until we can really get a handle on what these creatures are, we're all just tossing out our own confirmation bias. We're all just tossing out our own ideas and beliefs, and then filtering our images, filtering our information about Bigfoot through that. I think a lot of people do. I don't know about you, Jennifer, personally. Thanks for all your great questions. Let's see. My book's awesome. Thanks, Jessica. What's this? What's we got here? Jennifer Arnold made an excellent observation. Having good photographic evidence leads to a good place for experimentation that can help form a hypothesis. Yes. Nice comment. Yeah, hopefully Dr. Meldrum did a much better job than I did in talking about the differences of the thumbs. But for 2 or 3 years, all I heard was how Bigfoot has an opposable thumb. It's a primate. Therefore, it's a primate, and therefore we know what it is. I'm not sure. I don't know. I think we need more scientific investigation, is what it boils down to. Let's see. Oops. Yeah, here we go. Figure ground phenomena. Do you see the two faces facing each other, profile, or do you see the white chalice? Faces, white chalice, or maybe both. This is called figure ground. Our brain, and this is a good example. When I look at this, depending on how I look at it, sometimes the white chalice jumps out at me. Other times, the black faces facing each other in profile jump out at me. But that change in that difference is literally your brain cells working to try and resolve that dissonance of what am I looking at? Am I looking at a chalice? Am I looking at two profile faces, or am I looking at both? That's our brain literally doing it to us. I think somebody that I chat with on occasion, who I think is a pretty smart fella. I think he was being sarcastic when he said it, but he said pareidolia doesn't exist. It's a word made up to explain how Bigfoots are hiding in the shadows. Pareidolia happens in our brain. It's not Bigfoot casting out pareidolia to us. Not that he suggested that. Here's a little bit of an updated version of figure ground phenomena. The apple. Take a bite of that apple, and what you got two people one appearing to be a male on our right, the other appearing to be a female on our left. Don't know what they're saying. Figure and ground. The most fundamental way we organize visual information is divided into foreground or background. See the fish? See the blackbirds. Fish swimming, blackbirds flying. Had not seen this one before. Did a quick scan for something new. The old Victrola and the dove. Which do you see first? This is a new one to me. For some reason, I'm more attracted to the woman's legs than the men's legs. I'm not sure why that is. But you can see the women in high heels, their legs down on the bottom, and the men with flats shoes with their legs up. This is what happens when you took that 360-degree picture. This is part of what happens when you take that 360-degree frame by frame picture in the shadows, where you see things that may or may not be a Bigfoot. I just thought this was an awesome shot, especially with all the modern debate about whether the moon landing really happened or not. But the two astronauts on the moon with Earth behind forming a skull. Now, this next one, I must say, my favorite artist is Salvador Dali. If you know anything about Salvador Dali, yeah. Let's see, maybe it will not be quite as blurry. So this is a new and improved version of the chalice. Check this out. Boy, I wish I could get it bigger, but it blurs a lot to the point that it makes it more difficult to see. So you got the two faces looking at each other. You see the chalice in the center. But do you see the Mexican gentleman playing the guitar in front of a villa on the right-hand side? And the other Mexican gentleman making up the nose and eyes and chin of the woman, holding, I'm not sure what he's holding. It's a stack of pottery or bread or whatever it is. I failed to actually go back just to the original because it's the most powerful. When I virtually on every Bigfoot expedition I've been on, and it's over 20 organized large group into small group Bigfoot expeditions. So I get my feet on the ground. It's not uncommon to give the Bigfoots the high ground. So it's very typical to be sitting somewhere on a path that you've taken, and right in front of you is a ridge, and you're looking up at the ridge. You can see the night sky and the trees, and people are telling you they're seeing a Bigfoot darting between the trees. Could it be figure ground? Does the night sky make the figure, or does the swaying trees make the figure and cause the night sky to be the background or foreground or whatever? This comes into play. This can deceive you on a Bigfoot expedition. I'm not just bringing this stuff up. I keep being told I'm in the business of infotainment. I'm trying to be entertaining, but I'm in the business of info. Here we go with pareidolia in its truest sense. Let's see what happens when we blow this big boy up. This is all just smoke coming from a burning building, guys. Satan in the middle did not show up for the fire. It's just based on broken windows, airflow, smoke flow. And some people really lost their doo-doo when this appeared on the news and really felt like it was a sign of Satan. I don't. If you do, I don't mean to offend, but this is a classic example of pareidolia. Face. Speaking of faces, faces on Mars. Those aren't people's faces or visages popping up through the surface of Mars, guys. It looks like faces in the same way that shadows can look like Bigfoot when you take a picture of inside the tree line or from outside of the tree line looking for Bigfoot that you haven't seen with your naked eye. Another facial pareidolia. This is me after a rough night out with the ex-wife. That's what this is here. Black eye, slanted smile on a tortilla shell. Tortillas don't intentionally make us see a face there. We're seeing that face. So that's me after a rough night out on the town with my ex-wife. This is my wife after that ex-wife after that same night. She's got her nice perky eyes and she's smiling and life is great. And for the record, my ex-wife is awesome. She's been very supportive of me. I'm just making a joke. But more faces. Look at these little monkeys. Their teeth showing. It's the stamen of a flower. But we see little monkeys. That one in the back, well, actually, I didn't see this before. I see. If you focus on the teeth, it looks like they're angry, but if you just look at the shape of the mouth, it looks like they could be smiling. Which is it? That's pareidolia in and of itself, guys. How about this one? The purple roads. Anybody recognize that skull in there? Hard to miss that one. But again, that's not the flower projecting that image. That's how our brain interprets those wilted leaves and makes sense of that pattern. And clouds, probably the most frequent experience you've had with pareidolia is looking at clouds. Look at that guy. Is his mouth open or is that just his nose? Looks like his lips are kind of in a frown almost there on the left. But anybody else, or is it just me? Anybody else see that darn dog with his tongue hanging out to the right of this guy? Dark nose, you can see the teeth coming out, the tongue lagging out the front of the mouth, the head, almost like he's lunging at the guy's throat. Now, I see it. Not everybody else may see it. and I don't have comments on, so I don't know if anybody else has seen. But to me, that's an image of an old man about to get attacked by a dog man or a dog around the throat. Good thing this isn't an ink blot test, huh? The dragon or the monster. Just a tree stump, guys. Pareidolia. Hopefully this is pretty self-explanatory. And here we go. If you've been through this test before, don't, oh crap, don't ruin it for other people. There it did. So how many Bigfoot faces? We've got 4 by 4 square of a picture of the forest. Look closely, see if you can find any Bigfoot in there. Of course, I know the answer, but you know, I've recently started. My interest in little people are expanding. Sprites and little forest people, and well, I don't know. Bottom line, second one from the left, just a little bit up. Looks like I see a little beast there, a little rat or mouse. So you got your Bigfoots picked out. Of course, we're doing Pareidolia. So of course there are no Bigfoots in this picture. But here's where people see them. Look at the red circles. Look at that red circle in that top row, third from the left. Now you tell me if that doesn't look like a Bigfoot. The conical head, the deep set eyes, you can make out the nose, the shoulders, chest. That's got to be a Bigfoot, guys. That's got to be. Except it's not. It's Pareidolia. Look at the one down here in the right lower corner. It's reminiscent of some of these shadow deals that I was alluding to earlier. Can you make out that little face? Almost like I'm talking now the bottom right hand corner, and a tree or a stick goes from the picture above it, kind of making an arrow and pointing to what looks like a bearded face, a bearded man in that photo. Anybody else see it? If you can't see that, let's go to the left. The macabre face, left corner on the bottom. Look at that face in that, coming through that darkness. I've seen some Bigfoot photos that look exactly like that. Okay, I'm going to stop belaboring the point here. But honestly, I mean, that one on the top row, third from the left, who wouldn't think that could be a Bigfoot? See if I missed any questions. Back. No. Auditory pareidolia. Babbling streams or waterfalls. You'll hear voices and conversations in them. This happened to me on my first expedition. I was camped I arrived late because I had a flat tire. I camped away from everybody, laid down at night for my first expedition, and I heard voices. These guys are probably just talking about this new guy. What's going on there? Why are people talking like that? I got out of my tent to check out who was talking about me. And there was a drainage culvert about 15 feet from my tent. And the rainwater was draining through that metal culvert, dropping about 6 to 8 inches into a hole. And I swore I heard conversations. Tree knocks. Rubbing trees together in the breeze can make a tree knocks. Can sound like grunts or growls. Falling nuts, falling limbs, squirrels, chipmunks up in the trees, breaking limbs. That's Bigfoot throwing things at us. Bigfoot sneaking up on you. And again, I bring it back to the context. We're already out there looking for Bigfoot. So what are we going to be most likely to associate the stimuli that we hear when we're out in the woods at 2 o'clock in the morning? We're primed for confirmation bias to attribute it to Bigfoot. Animals rustling, walking, hopping in the leaves, bipedal footsteps. Boy, be careful before you become certain about a bipedal footstep. And listen closely when you can see animals moving in the forest. Close your eyes and listen closely to what they sound like when they move through the forest. It's just not a bipedal animal that can sound like they're making bipedal steps, I assure you. Auditory illusions, this is an old hat for my regulars. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. Biurnal beats. 2 simultaneous sounds register on our right ear. 2 simultaneous sounds, I'm sorry. One registering in our right ear, the other in our left ear, produce the illusion of a separate third sound. Just how many Bigfoots are actually in the area? This is more likely to happen if those 2 sounds hit your ears simultaneously and are simultaneously processed. The Franzen effect. We hear a sound originated from a directional source, no longer producing the sound. Is that Bigfoot on the left or the right of us? The Deutsch scale. We hear the directional location of the sound based on the source closest to us. Where exactly did that Bigfoot cry or scream come from us? There could be a Bigfoot elsewhere, but you're gonna focus your direction on the one closest to you. The glissando illusion. I think I might have experienced this. We hear ourselves being surrounded by multiple sound sources when it's only one at any given time. So damn, we're surrounded by those Bigfoots. You could hear them all around us. Could just be 2, could just be 3, and yet it sounds like they're surrounding you. Couldn't be any. It could be the wind blowing the leaves, and that's surrounding you. This is why it's important to investigate. When you're certain, and this is the irony in what we do if you're a field researcher. When you hear that, what could be leaves whirling all around you, what's your job? To overcome your fear and your flight and check it out. Try and see if there are multiple sources. Try and see what's creating that sound. Often a lot easier said than done. Okay, time for reflection. And maybe we'd be better off reflecting. Well, so normal curve, guys. That big hump in the middle, the 0, 1 to the left, negative, 1 to the right, that's almost 65% of the world population. For our purposes, that's 65% of the Bigfoots in the world. One step up or down, you add another 13.59%. 2.1, go another step up, 2.14%. Another step up, 0.13%. So, under the assumption that Bigfoots emit normal behavior, and that's a big damn assumption, isn't there, Eric? We can put all the Bigfoots in the world under this curve, this bell-shaped curve. Okay? But we can't go around and survey all the Bigfoots in the world. So we're going to stick to Georgia, Tennessee, and Kentucky. And we're going to sample the Bigfoot behavior in Georgia, Tennessee, and Kentucky. And so our sample now is what's under that curve. To bring this full circle, however, some arguably, hopefully any Bigfoot researcher, hopefully any scientific Bigfoot researcher or Sasquatch researcher worth their salt would not include such pictures. But every time you post a blob squatch, every time you post a picture where you never saw a Bigfoot in the tree line or in the forest, but you took your pictures and later found that Bigfoot when you reviewed that footage. Every time those kind of images get posted onto the web, that's adding to our database. And what it's adding, arguably, is it's adding error, because we're introducing a high degree of uncertainty with those pictures. So a researcher has to sift through those pictures and try to determine whether it's pareidolia or not. To look at it another way, for those of you who attended this workshop, top of the box, reality. Side of the box, test results. Be it tree knocks, tree structures, footprints. Those are our tests. And your tests say you found a Bigfoot, you've got it, or you haven't found a Bigfoot on the left. Unfortunately, there's this thing called consensus reality, and that's at the top. Reality says you've got it, you've captured Bigfoot, or you haven't captured Bigfoot. When the test says you've captured Bigfoot, and in reality you've captured Bigfoot in your image or in your data, that's called a true positive. When the test says no, you didn't capture Bigfoot on the left, and reality says no, you haven't captured Bigfoot, then you're in the lower right-hand corner, true negative. We're trying to maximize hits, guys, here. Every time you introduce an image that adds uncertainty, you make us less likely to have our hits. Now, you don't owe us anything, but again, if you're in this to proof of Bigfoot as a species, and you're doing that, you're hurting your own research and you're hurting community research. But if the test says you have it, and then you look at reality, and in reality you don't have it, that's a false positive. That's a type 1 error. If the test says you don't have it, and in reality you do have it, that's a miss. That's a false negative. That's a type 2 error. We're using science to try and reduce type 1 and type 2 errors, because every time we introduce more uncertainty into our database, we increase the likelihood of having a false positive or a false negative finding. This is pretty much why I've stopped looking at pictures. What do you guys think this is? Is this a Bigfoot? Circle it. Could this be a dog man? Circle it. What do you see in the shadows? No circle. What a waste of time. All it draws is opinion and debate and produces no factual conclusions. So this gets back to where I start. Why, guys, why? Help me understand why you're putting those pictures up there. Oh, Jessica. The clever Hans effect can definitely be at play in some instances, yes. Jessica is a dog trainer that has a knowledge of psychology of a PhD psychologist or better. The clever Hans effect, some of you may have heard me discuss this. Hans was a horse that could solve math problems, and he'd tap them out with his hooves, and people would ask him simple math problems on stage, and Hans could answer them consistently. To make a long story short, what it turns out is that Hans, the horse, was picking up on cues from the audience and picking up on cues from his trainer. And when they isolated Hans from visually seeing his trainer, he couldn't answer any questions, any math questions. I think at first the guy was accused of fraud, that he was tipping the horse off somehow, signal to the horse. And in fact, that's what they found. When they separated him, the horse was picking up on some signal. John, trying to swim upstream. You've already given the truth of science. Many for brighter than you. I've addressed this for centuries. Okay. So I should shut up. I'll shut up about that. Let's see. My point here, guys, is creating pareidolia pictures intentionally or unintentionally just adds more error to our database and just makes it more complicated to have any hopes of ever proving Bigfoot as a species. So I've highlighted some of the problems and some of the solutions, but let me make sure I get them. The very night expedition that you take heightens visual and auditory pareidolia. How often before you started going out on Bigfoot expeditions did you head out at 9 o'clock at night and stay out in the woods until 3, 4 in the morning? Maybe the bars, but the woods. You're going to see things at night that you wouldn't normally see in the daytime because we're more acutized and sensitized to daytime vision and visual images. So you're increasing your chances of pareidolia and spotting pareidolia and photographing pareidolia when you go out on night expeditions. I would say 80% of my expeditions have been night expeditions. Do a day expedition. Get some daytime pictures. That's the solution. I'm not saying don't do nighttime expeditions. When this all kicked off, it was believed that they were almost exclusively nocturnal. And so that's how the night expeditions became in favor. High tech. On my photograph show, we talked about how, with all the autofocus and auto control, oftentimes when you're trying to get that good picture of Bigfoot, the autofocus and all those automatic adjustments even make it more of a challenge than just doing it manually. My advice is to go low tech, single lens reflex camera. If you can buy one, probably not. Doug Hychek, who is a renowned videographer, he encourages 15 millimeter film for your investigations if you've got to do images. It's simpler, more difficult to fake, more difficult to manipulate. Here's the big one that might be offensive to people. Let's just stop our obsession with visual documentation. Thousands and thousands of pictures out there, some better than others, some crystal clear. To what end? I think we're hooked. I think the techies, video techies, heat-seeking, FLIR, all that stuff, I think we're being sold equipment we really don't know or we really don't need for scientific research. It can be used, but if you're into Bigfoot investigations to get trophies, to convince other people you saw a Bigfoot, to get a pat on the back when you post it online, and none of those are bad reasons to take pictures. Keep taking pictures. But if you want to help prove Bigfoot as a species exists, either don't take pictures or use your camera and use your audio recordings within the context of a scientific experiment. Make them scientific. The nice thing about audio is that we've got some normative data. Some people with expertise in cryptid languages have listened to the Sierra sounds, listened to the Ohio call. They've validated that this is from an unknown species. That's one of the nice things about audio. You can then compare it to a bear, to a cat, to whatever. Rabbits screaming sounds like a baby crying. Foxes screaming can sound like a baby crying. We've got to consider all sources. Let me get my ugly face back up here. If you're doing it for yourself and your buddies, great. But if you're doing it for science, invest your time elsewhere and your money elsewhere. Consider your camp setup to minimize auditory and visual pareidolia, or the next two. I learned that lesson well, my first one. So I don't, on one hand, you go out in the woods, you're right next to a stream. Oh, it's so great being in nature. I don't camp. When I set up my camp on an expedition, I stay as far away from streams. And if I can stay as far away from people as I can, I'll do that. Because Bigfoots will come into camp, and you don't need to be sorting through other people's conversations or a stream or a culvert or whatever the case may be. Same deal with where you're looking. when you're sitting at the bottom of that ridge looking up through those trees at night, recognize that you've set yourself up for a figure ground phenomena, and God only knows what you will see, but you got to keep in mind that that could play a part in what you're seeing. Lake reflections, light reflections, orbs. I've seen an orb. I've actually never seen an orb, but I swore I saw an orb, and it was a reflection off a lake from a light on shore. Please don't take 360-degree photos from the center of a meadow or when you're surrounded by trees, unless you've seen something going on with your naked eye. Or, screw Dr. Baranchuk, I'm going to take as many photos as I want and post as many as I want. Have at it. Just recognize that you're contaminating the database and you're introducing error to the database, and you may not even be looking at a Bigfoot. Oh, and now that I'm almost at the end here, I wanted to say that I'm kind of doing this in concert with my buddy Wayne Tothero. He's doing a show on Pareidolia this week, and so we just kind of informally decided to do our rant on Pareidolia together. And I hear they had some very nice words, him and Brian had some very nice words about my book, so I appreciate that, guy. Consider this policy. If you've got to circle it or point to it, don't post it. Policy. Or an internal standard for yourself. Be more selective about the blob squatches you post, if you got to post them. I've said this one multiple times already as a solution. Include pics and videos in the larger context of an experimental investigation. Make them scientific. Photos especially are not scientific in and of themselves, standing on their own. But if you capture a photo, if you do, for example, that tree structure study that I presented on an earlier show, and you back it up with hidden video or audio, how powerful is it going to be for that photo to show a Bigfoot altering a tree structure or making a new tree structure? Do things scientifically, guys. I guess you're probably getting tired of hearing me say that. But that's my presentation for the day. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. I don't know. We've got a few minutes to entertain some questions. If anybody has any, let me backtrack, see if I missed any. Clever Hans, anything or anyone else got any questions, comments? Craig, we gotta touch base and get going on our deal here. Eric, nice to see you. I hope things continue well for you and everyone else. Any questions? Finding the Trackway. Thanks for attending. You're new. I think you may be relatively new to the channel, so thank you. I appreciate you being here, having a listen. David Roasty, thank you for attending. Of course, my regulars, Jennifer, Jessica, Carolina, if you're out there, if you made it, David Friedline, thank you for attending. Chu Perez, thank you for attending. This is not your typical Bigfoot show. So if nobody has any questions, let me get back down to the bottom so I don't miss any. Thank you everybody for attending. I hope you get out in the woods and look for Bigfoot. Don't become a armchair researcher. Get out in the woods. Experience it. Anyways, I hope you guys have an excellent week until next week. Hope you get out. I'm going to ask you to continue. If you're here, you got to have your mind open, which is why I have so few followers. But I do appreciate all my regulars and any new followers very much. But keep your mind open, keep your boots on the ground, and keep your heart with your higher power. God bless you. Be safe.
I see you running out of reason. Don't try to blame it on the season. Why you wanna walk away? When we began, swear we had something that would last. Baby has a feeling bad. Falling in was easy. How do I make it stay? I'll never let go of you. Tried and true. Oh, I'll never let go of you. Tried and true. Was I a fool? I know sometimes I may wonder, but I would never leave asunder a thing as good as what we have. Is it a rule? What's good is worth the fighting. There ain't no denying that you and I were made to last. Falling in is easy. How can we make it stay? I'll never let go of you. Tried and true. I'll never let go of you. Tried and true. I'll never let go of you. Tried and true. I'll never let go of you. Tried and Have you had a change of heart? Can we go back to the start? I'll never let go of you. Tried and true. I'll never let go of you. Tried and true. Tried and true.
Wanna do it all with you by my side. If you're in, meet me here tonight. Be brave and come along. I'll be alright. Promise we